The party was alive, with music and laughter, until the lights flickered, a shadow moved, and a whisper chilled Diddy to his core. You shouldn't have invited me. Everyone thinks being invited to one of Diddy's legendary parties is the ultimate dream, but I'm here to tell you, it's not. I attended his New Year's Eve bash last year, and what started as the most glamorous night of my life turned into a nightmare I still can't shake. There's something about that mansion, something dark, and now I can't close my eyes without hearing the whispers. You shouldn't have come. Diddy's mansion was straight out of a movie. Glowing chandeliers, sprawling marble floors, and the best DJs spinning all night. The guest list was A-list. From celebrities to influencers, everyone was there. I had no idea how I managed to score an invite through a mutual friend, but the second I stepped inside, I knew this night would be unforgettable. What I didn't realize was that it would be for all the wrong reasons. At first, everything felt magical. The drinks flowed, the music thumped, and the energy was electric. Diddy himself made a grand entrance, descending the staircase like royalty, giving a quick toast that had everyone cheering. There was a strange weight in the air, like the house itself was alive and watching. I tried to ignore it, chalking it up to nerves. After all, I was surrounded by people way out of my league. But then I noticed Diddy. He wasn't mingling or laughing with the crowd like I'd imagined. Instead, he stood by the edge of the room, his eyes scanning the mansion like he was looking for someone or something. Around 11:30 p.m., the vibe shifted completely. The air grew cold, unnaturally cold, like stepping into a freezer. Guests started commenting on it, but everyone laughed it off, blaming the AC. Then the lights flickered, not once, not twice, but 3 times. A murmur spread through the crowd, and for a split second, the music stopped before roaring back to life. I glanced at Diddy, and for the first time, I saw rainbows running through the AC. Then the lights flickered. Not once, not twice, not 3. By midnight, the mansion was packed. Everyone gathered near the massive chandelier in the grand hall for the countdown. The DJ's voice boomed through the speakers. 10, 9, 8. The crowd was ecstatic, raising glasses, cheering, kissing. But as we hit 1, everything stopped. The lights went out. It wasn't the kind of flicker we'd seen earlier. This time, the darkness was absolute. The music cut off completely, and the silence that followed was deafening. People gasped, laughed nervously, pulling out their phones to use as flashlights. I expected the lights to come back on within seconds, but they didn't. And then I heard it. A whisper, low, guttural, and impossible to place. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. As if the light was laughing, the crowd erupted into chaos. People screamed, stumbling in the dark, knocking over tables and spilling drinks. I froze, my heart pounding, trying to convince myself that I hadn't really heard it. But the whispers grew louder, echoing through the mansion. "Get out! Leave now!" A bright flash illuminated the room as someone snapped a photo, and for a split second, I saw something that still haunts me. A figure stood at the top of the staircase, tall and dark, with no discernible features. Its head tilted unnaturally, almost like it was watching us. But when the flash faded, the figure was gone. The lights flickered back on, but they didn't bring comfort. Instead, they revealed something even worse. The massive chandelier above us was swaying violently, as if something had pushed it. The air grew heavy, oppressive, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. Diddy grabbed a mic and shouted, "Everyone stay calm," but his voice was shaky, and I could tell he didn't believe his own words. Suddenly, someone screamed. A woman pointed at the far corner of the room where shadows seemed to be moving on their own. They twisted and writhed, growing taller, darker, until they formed another figure. This one had glowing red eyes that pierced through the dim light. People panicked, running toward the exits, only to find the front doors locked. I followed the crowd, desperate to get out, but every door was sealed shut. The whispers returned, louder now, more insistent. "You're not welcome here." Glasses shattered, tables tipped over, and in the chaos, I saw Diddy standing completely still, his face pale as a ghost. "Well, didn't you do it?" someone shouted at him, one of his staff members. "You said it was taken care of." Diddy didn't respond. He just stared at the shadows, muttering something under his breath. The whispers grew into a roar, a deafening sound that filled every inch of the room. I pressed my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. Then, out of nowhere, the chandelier crashed to the floor, shattering into a million pieces. The sound was so loud, it shook the walls, and the shadows began moving toward us. Someone smashed a window with a chair, and the cold night air poured in. People scrambled to climb out, cutting themselves on the broken glass, desperate to escape. I didn't think twice. I climbed out after them, ignoring the sting of the cuts on my hands. Once I was outside, the air felt lighter, safer. But when I looked back at the house, my stomach dropped. In the window, I saw it again. The dark figure, watching us. It didn't move, didn't chase us, but its presence was enough to send chills down my spine. I turned and ran, not stopping until I was far away from the mansion. Later, I heard rumors. Some said Diddy's mansion was haunted, cursed by something he had invited in years ago during a spiritual ritual gone wrong. Others claimed it was all a setup, a twisted PR stunt. But I know what I saw. That figure, those whispers, the suffocating darkness, it was real. Diddy never spoke publicly about the party, and no one who was there likes to talk about it. The mansion went up for sale a few weeks later, but as far as I know, no one has bought it. To this day, I can still hear the whisper in my nightmares. "You shouldn't have come." And every New Year's Eve, I make sure I'm nowhere near that mansion. Some parties just aren't worth it. Everyone knows Diddy throws the most extravagant New Year's Eve parties, but no one talks about that night. The night the music stopped, the lights flickered, and the screams began. I was there, and I'll never forget what I saw, or the whisper that still haunts me. "You shouldn't have come." The evening started like a dream. Diddy's mansion was massive, glowing with golden light and decorated like a palace. Celebrities and influencers roamed the halls in designer outfits. Laughter and music filled the air, and the smell of expensive champagne lingered in every room. I had been lucky enough to snag an invite through a friend, and stepping into that house felt like stepping into another world. I thought it would be the best night of my life. I was wrong. At first, everything seemed perfect. The DJ spun upbeat tracks, and the dance floor was packed. Diddy himself made an entrance down the grand staircase, charismatic as ever, and gave a toast that had the crowd cheering. But then, out of nowhere, I noticed his demeanor shift. He kept glancing around, his smile fading, his eyes scanning the room like he was looking for someone or something. I shrugged it off. Maybe he was just stressed about hosting such a huge event. But as the night went on, I couldn't help but feel strange. The house was warm from all the bodies, yet I kept getting chills. I told myself it was just my imagination, but it felt like the air was heavy, like something unseen was pressing down on me. It wasn't until I overheard two servers whispering that I realized I wasn't the only one feeling it. "Did he do the cleansing ritual this year?" one of them asked nervously. The other shook his head. "No, he said it wasn't necessary, but after last time..." She didn't finish her sentence, but the look on her face said it all. Before I could ask what they meant, the lights flickered. Just a quick pulse, like a warning. The music skipped. The chatter quieted for a moment, and everyone exchanged nervous glances. Then Diddy's voice boomed over the mic. "Relax, y'all. Keep the energy high. It's just the power acting up." The crowd laughed, the tension eased, and the party continued. But Diddy's face betrayed him. He didn't look amused. He looked scared. Midnight was fast approaching, and the energy in the room grew frenzied. People crowded around the dance floor, holding glasses of champagne, counting down as the seconds ticked away. The DJ's voice rose with the crowd. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year's. The sudden darkness was suffocating. People gasped and screamed, but no one moved, as if we were all waiting for something. The music cut out, replaced by an eerie silence that made my skin crawl. Then, from somewhere deep in the house, came a sound I'll never forget. A low, guttural whisper that echoed through the walls. "You shouldn't have come." The room erupted into chaos. People screamed and stumbled over each other in the dark, frantically searching for their phones or trying to find the exits. I stood frozen, heart pounding, trying to convince myself that I'd imagined it. But then I heard it again, louder this time. "Leave now, while you can." Suddenly, the lights flickered back on, but something was wrong. The chandelier above the dance floor was swinging wildly, as if someone, or something, had grabbed it. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting and writhing in shapes that didn't match the movement of the guests. I looked up at the second-floor balcony and saw a figure standing there, a tall, dark silhouette that seemed to watch us with a cold, unblinking gaze. "Who is that?" someone shouted, but no one answered. Then the figure disappeared, melting into the shadows like smoke. Diddy grabbed the mic, his voice trembling. "Everyone stay calm. It's nothing. Just stay here, don't go anywhere." But his words did nothing to calm the massive front doors. But when someone tried to open the massive front doors, they wouldn't budge. A man pounded on the glass, shouting, "They're locked! We're trapped!" That's when the temperature in the room plummeted. The air was so cold, I could see my breath, and a deep, unrelenting sense of dread settled over me. Then the whispers returned, this time coming from every corner of the room. "This is my place. You don't belong here." The words were faint but unmistakable, and the fear on Diddy's face confirmed that this wasn't the first time he'd heard them. He backed away from the mic, muttering something under his breath, his hand shaking. Suddenly, one of the guests, a woman in a silver dress, let out a blood-curdling scream. She pointed to the corner of the room where a shadowy figure was crawling along the floor, its movements jerky and unnatural. "It's coming!" she screamed, and the room descended into chaos once more. Glasses shattered, tables overturned, and people trampled each other in their desperation to escape. I ran toward the kitchen, hoping to find a back door, but instead I found Diddy, standing alone, staring at something I couldn't see. "You didn't do the ritual?" I blurted out, remembering the server's conversation. His eyes snapped to mine, filled with terror. "Oh, I thought it was over," he whispered. "I thought it was gone." "What's gone?" I demanded. But before he could answer, the lights cut out again. This time, they didn't come back on. In the darkness, the whispers grew louder, turning into a deafening roar. I felt something cold brush against my arm, and I screamed, stumbling backward. Then I heard Diddy yell, "Get out! Everyone, get out!" But how could we? The doors wouldn't open, and the shadows seemed to be closing in, suffocating us. Finally, someone shattered one of the massive windows with a chair, and people began climbing out, cutting themselves on the glass in their desperation. I didn't think twice. I ran for the window, ignoring the stinging pain as I squeezed through. Outside, the air felt lighter, safer. But when I looked back at the house, I saw the shadowy figure standing in the window, watching us leave. I don't know what happened after that. Diddy never spoke publicly about the party, and the mansion was put up for sale within weeks. Rumors swirled about hauntings, rituals gone wrong, and entities that had been invited in and never left. All I know is that I'll never step foot in that house again. And every New Year's Eve, when the clock strikes midnight, I can still hear the whisper, "You shouldn't have come." Everyone dreams of being invited to a party at Diddy's mansion. It's the pinnacle of fame, luxury, and exclusivity. But let me tell you something, nobody will. Not all of Diddy's parties end with champagne and selfies. The one I attended last New Year's Eve turned into something out of a horror movie, and I still can't sleep without thinking about it. It started like a dream. Diddy's mansion was everything you'd imagine and more. Sprawling, glowing with lights, and echoing with music so loud you could feel it in your chest. I was lucky enough to score an invite through a friend of a friend, and the energy was electric. Everyone looked incredible, dressed to kill, and the champagne flowed like water. But within minutes of stepping inside, I noticed something obvious at first. Just a strange heaviness in the air. You know that feeling you get when someone is watching you? That's what it felt like, constantly. I brushed it off and tried to enjoy myself, mingling with people way out of my league. As the night went on, the energy shifted. I couldn't put my finger on it, but it felt like the music was quieter, like the room had grown colder. Then I noticed Diddy himself, standing by the massive grand staircase, looking uneasy. He wasn't his usual lively self, barely speaking to anyone. He just kept glancing up at the chandelier, as if he was waiting for something. At one point, the lights flickered. Just a momentary blip, but it was enough to send a murmur through the crowd. People laughed nervously, brushing it off, but Diddy's face said it all. He was not amused. He waved it off and told everyone to keep partying, but I caught him muttering something to a staff member under his breath. Something about it starting again. I thought to myself. What could it be? I tried not to overthink it, but a growing unease began to creep into my gut. And then, at exactly midnight, all hell broke loose. The countdown began, and as the crowd shouted Happy New Year, the chandelier above us swayed violently, almost like someone had grabbed it and was shaking it. Glasses shattered. People screamed, and then the lights went out completely. The screams grew louder as darkness enveloped us. For a moment, the only light came from a few phone screens, and the air was thick with panic. I thought it was just a blackout, until I heard the whisper, low, guttural, and coming from everywhere at once. "You shouldn't be here," it hissed. My blood ran cold. I thought I was imagining it, but the looks on people's faces told me they'd heard it too. Suddenly, one of the guests, a woman standing near the staircase, let out a blood-curdling scream. "There's someone up there!" she shrieked, pointing at the now dark second floor. Everyone turned, their eyes scanning the darkness, but we couldn't see anything. And then, as if on cue, the music started playing again, except it was warped, distorted, like an old vinyl record playing at the wrong speed. It was no longer a party. It was chaos. Diddy stepped forward, yelling for everyone to calm down, but his voice cracked with fear. "Everyone stay in the main room," he shouted, but people didn't listen. Some bolted for the exit, only to find the front doors locked. Others huddled together, clutching their phones like lifelines. I stayed frozen, torn between running and figuring out what the hell was going on. Then I saw it, a shadow, tall and impossibly thin, moving across the ceiling, not the floor, the ceiling. My stomach dropped as it slithered out of sight, like smoke dissipating into the darkness. Someone yelled, "What is that?" But no one had an answer. Diddy's face was pale as a ghost, and for the first time, I realized he knew what was happening. He wasn't surprised. He was terrified. The air grew colder, so cold I could barely see it. I clung to the side of a marble column, my heart racing. That's when I noticed Diddy muttering something under his breath, his lips barely moving. A prayer, maybe? Whatever it was, it didn't work. A loud crash came from the upstairs hallway, followed by a deep, guttural growl. And then, footsteps. Heavy, deliberate footsteps coming down the staircase. No one moved. No one breathed. We all just stood there, staring at the staircase as the footsteps got closer. But when the figure emerged, there was nothing there. The footsteps continued, echoing through the silent room, but we couldn't see anyone. A bottle of champagne suddenly flew off a nearby table, smashing into the wall. People screamed, pushing and shoving as they tried to back away, but there was no one moved. Diddy finally snapped. "Get everyone out," he yelled at his staff, but they looked just as paralyzed as the rest of us. That's when the shadow returned, now towering over the crowd. It didn't have a face, just a swirling mass of darkness, but you could feel it staring at you. It moved closer, and as it did, the whispers returned. "You shouldn't have come. This is my place." I swear, the air felt heavier, like it was sucking the life out of me. People started collapsing, clutching their chests, gasping for air. I grabbed the person closest to me and pulled them toward the back exit, praying it wasn't locked. To my relief, it wasn't. And we stumbled into the night air, choking and coughing. A few others followed, but most were too panicked to even notice the exit. From outside, we could still hear the distorted music and screams coming from inside. Diddy was the last to leave. I saw him stumble out, his face drenched in sweat, muttering, "I should have listened. I shouldn't have done it." I don't know what he meant, and I didn't stick around to ask. I've been to a lot of parties, but nothing like that night. Diddy never spoke about it publicly, and I heard he sold the mansion shortly after. But I'll never forget what I saw, or the whispers. I still hear when I close my eyes. Whatever was in that house